I didn't inherit my grandfather's fortune. I was listed in it. The thought didn't come to me dramatically. It arrived the way cold does, quietly, without permission, already under the skin. The funeral home was all glass and gray marble, like someone had tried to design grief using a corporate color palette. Everything smelled of lilies and ozone, sharp and clean, the kind of scent that insists nothing ugly ever happens here. Outside the tall windows, the city moved on in polite indifference. Inside, my family gathered in perfect black, perfect posture, perfect silence. Werewolves in tailored suits looked a lot like humans who could afford better lawyers. I had organized everything. The flowers, the service, the seating chart so the feuding branches of the family wouldn't snarl at each other across the aisle. I had booked the hall, spoken to the director, approved the music, corrected my aunt when she tried to replace the pianist with a string quartet because strings feel richer. I had done what I always did. I made it easier. "Thomas," my cousin Mara murmured, touching my arm. "You've been incredible. Truly incredible, useful, comfortably invisible." I gave her the right smile. The small one. The one that said, "Don't worry about me. Worry about yourselves. I'll hold the edges of this together." My grandfather's portrait watched us from the front of the hall. Silver-haired, sharp-eyed, a man who had built half the financial architecture our clan lived inside. He had taught me contract law before I was old enough to drink. Had once told me affection was unreliable. But paper never forgot. He would have appreciated today. After the service, we moved to the private office upstairs. Glass walls, soft lighting, a long table that could have hosted a board meeting or a trial. The notary was already there, an older wolf with steel-rimmed glasses and hands folded like he was about to conduct a very small orchestra. If this story caught you, subscribe. More are waiting. Beside him stood a man I didn't recognize. Not family. Too still. Too neutral. A corporate representative. My mind supplied automatically. Dark suit, no insignia. A tablet held against his chest like a shield. We took our seats. The reading began. Assets. Funds. Holdings. Trusts. I listened with half my mind, the professional half, noting phrasing, legality, structure. The other half drifted, tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. Grief, maybe, or relief, or just the familiar hollow that followed every family gathering. Then the notary adjusted his glasses and said my name. Thomas Hale. I straightened, out of reflex more than attention. Pursuant to Addendum C, Section 4, Thomas Hale is hereby listed among the assets guaranteeing the outstanding obligations of the Hale estate. For one strange second, I waited for the rest of the sentence. It didn't come. I let out a short laugh, actually laughed. It popped out of me, light and wrong. "I'm sorry," I said. That was phrased oddly. No one laughed with me. The silence was immediate, thick, the kind that presses on the ears. The notary didn't blink. The obligations have been transferred. The contract has been activated. Cold slid under my skin. Not metaphorical cold, not nerves. Something physical, a spreading chill in my chest. Like a metal plate had been laid against my ribs. My mouth filled with a faint, bitter taste. Copper or static, or the ghost of a coin. I swallowed. The room felt smaller. The representative stepped forward. "Mr. Hale," he said calmly, "your status has been updated." That was when it hit. The pressure. Invisible, but real. A tightening around my lungs. Not pain, not yet. More like a hand had closed around a cord inside me and begun to pull. I pressed my palm to the table. The marble was warm. I wasn't. "Updated to what?" I asked, and was faintly impressed my voice didn't crack. The notary cleared his throat. "You have been registered as collateral, effective immediately." Collateral, a word I had written 1,000 times. A word that had never, until now, had a heartbeat. "There must be a mistake," I said. "I'm an attorney for this family. I drafted 3 of these trusts myself." "Yes," the notary agreed gently, "which is why the documentation is thorough." The representative inclined his head. Your case has already been assigned, he said. Your supervising party will contact you shortly. His name is ALEX WEIR. The name fell into the room like a closing door. The pressure in my chest tightened. Legal language shouldn't make your body react. Contracts weren't supposed to taste like metal. The building wasn't labeled. No glowing logo. No aggressive branding. Just a tower of dark glass rising between two financial giants like a pause in a sentence. Even the street outside felt quieter, as if sound knew better than to linger here. I went in as a lawyer. Briefcase. Tailored coat. Credentials already pulled up on my phone. I told myself this was procedural, that whatever had happened upstairs in that marble mausoleum could be corrected with the right documents, the right pressure, the right leverage. That belief lasted until the doors closed behind me. The lobby was too clean. Not minimalist, emptied. Pale stone floors, soft white light, a reception desk with no visible clutter. No magazines, no plants, no art. Even the air felt filtered of personality. My shoes sounded too loud. Each step echoed like a question no one intended to answer. A man in a charcoal suit approached. Mid-30s, beta by scent, posture precise enough to hurt. "Thomas Hale," he said. "Not a question. I'm Manager Kessler. Please come with me." We walked. The silence wasn't dramatic. It was administrative. Hallways of glass and steel, offices like cubes of light. People moved behind transparent walls, all of them focused, all of them quiet. I felt observed, not watched. Logged. Kessler gestured me into a conference room. It was smaller than I expected. One table, 3 chairs, a single screen on the wall. No windows. "Before we proceed," I said, setting my briefcase down, "I want to clarify something. There's been an error in the phrasing of a will. I'm here to correct it." Kessler sat, folded his hands. "There has been no error." "Then you're going to need to explain," I said, "how a living person can be—" I hesitated. "Listed. Of course." He tapped the tablet in front of him. The wall screen lit up. Lines of text. Familiar structure. Unfamiliar intent. "You are not a debtor, Mr. Hale. You are not obligated to repayment." "Good," I said sharply. "You are an assurance," he continued. "An active guarantee." My stomach tightened. "In practical terms," Kessler went on, "you are a secured asset." The words slid into me like cold instruments. "I'm a person," I said. "Yes," he agreed, without irony. "And also, collateral." I stood. "Then this meeting is over." Kessler didn't move. "Your contract activated yesterday at 1742. Standing is not termination." The pressure hit. Harder than before. My breath stuttered. Something pulled tight inside my chest, invisible fingers drawing a cord through muscle and bone. Heat flared, then ice. My hand clenched around the edge of the table. Kessler watched with professional concern. "Your supervising party will manage symptomatic responses." "Supervising," I started. The door opened. He didn't rush in, didn't announce himself. He simply stepped into the room, and the air changed. Taller than Kessler, broad-shouldered without bulk, dark hair, neatly cut. His eyes were a cool, unreadable gray-green, like deep water under cloud cover. He wore a black suit without ornament, as if decoration were a personal insult. "Alpha." The contract reacted instantly. Pain sparked. Sharp, electrical, blooming behind my sternum. I sucked in a breath I couldn't seem to finish. Then he stopped beside me, not touching. Just there. The pain receded. Not gone, but muted, as if someone had turned down the volume on my nervous system. I realized I was shaking. "Mr. Hale," he said. His voice was calm, low, almost gentle. It cut straight through the room. "I'm ALEX WEIR." I forced myself upright. "You're late." A flicker, not in his face, in the air. Something like restrained amusement. "By 32 seconds, he said. "I apologize." Kessler stood. "Your case has been formally transferred." Transferred. The word landed differently now. Alex's gaze never left mine. I'll take responsibility from here. Kessler inclined his head, collected his tablet, and left. The door closed with a sound too soft to be mercy. So, I said, because silence felt dangerous. You collect people. I supervise accounts, Alex replied. I'm not an account. No, he agreed. You're a guarantee. I laughed, breathless. That's worse. Usually, he said, yes. The pressure in my chest shifted, not squeezing. Holding. I want this contract annulled, I said. Today, Alex studied me, not like a predator, like a physician considering a complicated chart. That is not currently possible. Then you're telling me you own me. He shook his head once. I don't own you, he said quietly. I supervise the fact that someone else does. The words should have broken something. Instead, they made a thin, dangerous crack. And for the first time since the will was read, part of me wondered if the monster everyone feared might not be the one standing in front of me. Alex's office occupied the top floor, not the dramatic kind of top floor. No gothic excess, no predatory luxury. Just space, glass walls, pale concrete, a single long desk that looked like it had never known clutter. Beyond it, the city spread out in steel and light, distant and unreal, as if I were already separated from it by something thicker than altitude. Sit, Alex said. Not a command, an instruction. I sat anyway. He didn't go behind the desk. He took the chair across from me, placing himself close enough that I could feel him. Not scent, not heat, but pressure, like standing near a generator. Before we begin, he said, you should understand the structure of your status. Can I skip to the part where I sue everyone involved? I asked. A pause. Not yet. Figures. Alex folded his hands loosely. Your contract binds you as collateral to obligations incurred by the Hale estate. Until those obligations are resolved or nullified, your movement, finances, and professional activity fall under temporary supervision. Temporary, I echoed. Yes, how temporary? That depends on how effective you are. I snorted. So I'm still being graded. You always were, he replied. I opened my mouth to retort and flinched. The pressure in my chest sharpened, sudden and hot. My jaw clenched before I realized it. A tremor moved through my fingers. Alex's gaze flicked precise to my hand. Stress response, he said. I'm fine, I lied. You're not. He stood. The shift was immediate. The invisible tension in the room realigned around him. He didn't touch me. He didn't need to. He stepped closer, into my personal space, and the pain eased like a tide pulling back. My breath evened. I hated that. Is that you? I asked tightly. Or the contract? Both, he said. Alpha influence dampens active bindings. Think of it as noise cancellation. Fantastic, I muttered. I've been turned into a corporate headset. That earned me the slightest upward curve of his mouth. Barely there, but real. Your monitoring, he continued, returning to the chair, will include location awareness, physiological alerts, and contract fluctuation tracking. You will not leave the metropolitan zone without approval. You will not sign binding documents without review. You will not engage in work related to your family's legal operations. So, I'm grounded, I said. Do I at least get an allowance? Yes. I blinked. I was joking. I wasn't. There was something profoundly insulting about how normal he made this sound. You'll receive a device, he went on. Non-invasive. You'll check in once a day. More if the contract destabilizes, which it does when I'm stressed, I said. Correct. So the solution is not being stressed, I said dryly. I'll pencil that in. He regarded me. Mockery is also a stress response. Then I'm thriving. Alex rose again, gesturing toward the door. We're done here. Already? I stood. The room tilted faintly, then settled as he moved beside me. The pain retreated. My body leaned into the relief before I could stop it. I noticed. He definitely did. We took the elevator down in silence. Then his car, black, unmarked, impossibly quiet. The city slid past the windows, unreachable. This feels like corporate hell, I said at last. Very sleek. Very climate-controlled. Lots of liability waivers. Hell, Alex replied, watching the road, is much less organized. I huffed a laugh despite myself. Of course you'd know. I consult. The corner of his mouth twitched again. As the car moved, the pressure in my chest softened to something almost tolerable. I stared out at the city. I was no longer free to walk. I had never felt so supervised. Or, disturbingly, so stable. My apartment still smelled like me. Coffee, old paper, the faint citrus of the cleaner I never remembered to rinse properly. It should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like evidence, proof of a life I'd stepped out of without permission. I didn't even take off my coat. I went straight to my desk and powered up every screen. If this was a contract, it had a history. And if it had a history, it had flaws. The first hour disappeared into muscle memory. Database logins, encrypted archives, legacy trust registries I hadn't accessed since my apprenticeship. My fingers moved without conscious thought, chasing chains of liability and cross-referencing estate vehicles. At first, everything looked immaculate. Too immaculate. The Hale family prided itself on documentation, on redundancies, on paper trails so thick they could strangle you. Here, I kept hitting walls, missing annexes, redacted transfers, entire subsidiaries that appeared in indexes and nowhere else, digital ledgers with timestamps that skipped like a scratched record. My pulse picked up. The pressure followed, not pain, yet, a warning vibration under my sternum like the contract clearing its throat. Not now, I muttered, rubbing my jaw. The tension eased a fraction. I frowned. Then I noticed the secure channel blinking on my screen. A Weir, active. Of course he was monitoring. I opened the line. Do you enjoy watching people read their own obituaries? I asked. Alex's voice came through clear and unhurried. You're accessing restricted Hale archives. Gold star, I said. Care to explain why half of them look like someone took a bite out of the timeline? A pause. Just long enough to mean something. Some of your family's obligations were consolidated, he said. Records were streamlined. Streamlined, I repeated. Is that what we're calling evidence disposal now? Careful. Why? I snapped. Will my metadata hurt its feelings? The pressure spiked. Heat this time. Sharp and immediate. I sucked in a breath through my teeth. Thomas, Alex said. Step away from the interface. I'm not a misbehaving intern, I shot back. And I'm definitely not your project. Silence. Then evenly, you are destabilizing the binding. Good, I said. Maybe it'll choke. The pressure tightened. Hard enough that I had to brace myself against the desk. Then it receded. Not gradually, instantly. A shadow crossed my floor. I looked up. Alex stood in my doorway. I hadn't heard him enter. He didn't cross the room. He didn't need to. The air adjusted to him. The pain collapsed into a dull echo, like thunder moving away. My hands were shaking. Is this part of the service? I demanded. Show up unannounced and recalibrate my organs? You tripped a containment alert, he said. And yes. I laughed, breathless. So you do rush in when things get ugly. He met my gaze, unblinking. If I wanted you broken, you'd already be quiet. The words landed hard. Not as a threat, as a fact. I straightened. Then, why are you helping me dig? Because, he said. You're not wrong. I hesitated. About what? He moved closer, eyes flicking to the open data streams. About the gaps, about the missing chains, about the fact that Hale obligations do not behave like legitimate debt. I stared at him. You know, I said slowly. I suspect, he corrected. And yet you work for the people enforcing them. I work, he said, for the structure that makes them visible. And the difference is access. He reached past me, entering a command string I didn't recognize. My screen refreshed. New directories, unfolded. Hidden ones. My breath caught. You didn't need to do that, I said. No, Alex agreed. I chose to. Our eyes met. For the first time since the funeral, the shape of the room felt different, not safe, but no longer occupied solely by an enemy. Something more precise had taken its place. Something that could cut both ways. The new directories multiplied like veins. Once I knew where to look, the archives stopped pretending. Hidden subledgers unfolded beneath public records. Closed registries linked to shell trusts. Old contractual frameworks nested inside new ones like preserved insects in amber. The deeper I went, the less this resembled debt, and the more it resembled design. I worked until time lost relevance. Screens glowed in the dark of my apartment. Data reflected in the window like a second city, made of names instead of buildings. I cross-referenced estates, matched activation dates, tracked the moment obligations appeared on books where none had existed before. A shape emerged. It wasn't random. The first name that made my hands still was Elliot Crane, 26, heir to a shipping dynasty, listed as deceased in a maritime incident. Contract activation, 3 weeks before his disappearance. Then, Mara Lorne, 23, political firebrand, estranged from her family, declared mentally unfit. Contract activated, 4 days before she was institutionalized. No release record. Jonah Pierce, 29, refused to transfer voting shares, moved abroad. Contract activated 1 day prior. I sat back, heart pounding. Every single case followed the same quiet choreography. A conflict, a complication, a contract, and then a vanishing, not always death. Sometimes a relocation, a closed clinic, a sealed settlement, a charitable foundation that suddenly owned everything. The language changed. The outcome didn't. By dawn, my living room floor was covered in printed pages, timelines, flowcharts. Old family trees I had grown up tracing for fun now looked like maps of something parasitic. I drove to the Hale Library on autopilot. The building predated most zoning laws. Stone, not glass. High windows. The kind of place that smelled like dust, no matter how often it was cleaned. Our family kept the historical archives here. Documents too old, too sensitive, or too embarrassing to digitize. I hadn't been inside since law school. I signed myself in. No one stopped me. The stacks were colder than the rest of the building. My footsteps echoed between shelves of bound ledgers and lacquered cases. I pulled volumes at random. Trust records, private correspondences, early inter-clan agreements. The pattern was older than the corporation, much older. I found notes written in my great-grandfather's precise hand. Contingency beneficiaries, voluntary assurances, internal risk management, names crossed out, names I recognized, names I had been taught to say with affection. My phone vibrated. A Weir, active. I didn't bother with pretense. I sent him the files, the timelines, the clustering charts. It took him longer to respond this time. When he did, his message was only 4 words. Yes, I see it. We met in the library's reading room. Long tables. Green-shaded lamps. The city muted behind stained glass. Alex didn't touch the documents. He didn't need to. You're not chasing debt, he said. You're tracing disposals. They're not even subtle, I said hoarsely. They don't erase people. They reclassify them. They make them manageable, Alex corrected. By turning them into financial instruments. Yes, my jaw tightened. Your corporation facilitates this. It presents the interface, he said. It enforces the visible layer. And the invisible one belongs to the clans. The words settled between us, heavy and ancient. This system, I said, gesturing to the tables, the walls, the bones of the place, didn't start with collectors. No, Alex agreed. It started with families who wanted a way to remove internal threats without blood on the floor. And you just... I laughed, sharp and ugly. You package it. I contain it, he said. And I watch it. For what? For a failure condition, I looked at him. For proof, he continued, that it can be forced into the open. My hands curled in my sleeves. I think that proof is me. Alex held my gaze. I think, he said, you're the first case that survived long enough to say so. The realization didn't feel like fear. It felt like standing in front of a machine and finally understanding that every gear in it was hungry, and that my family had built it that way. The reception was held in the east wing of the Hale residence, not the old stone part, the renovated one, all gold light and floating staircases, walls of crystal that caught the evening and fractured it into something expensive, the kind of place designed to reassure donors, investors, and political allies that nothing in this family had ever been broken. Music drifted through the hall, soft strings, tasteful, anonymous. Servers moved like trained ghosts between clusters of impeccably dressed wolves. Laughter rang out in measured bursts. Sympathy was offered in silk-wrapped sentences. Alex stayed half a step behind me, not possessive, strategic. The moment I crossed the threshold, the contract tightened. Not like before. This wasn't sharp. It was pervasive, a pressure spreading under my skin, as if the air itself had grown heavier. My jaw set without permission. Heat crawled along my spine. Alex noticed immediately. He didn't comment. He shifted closer. The sensation dulled. I hated how instinctive my relief was. "Thomas!" my Aunt Elsbeth exclaimed, gliding toward me in morning couture. She cupped my cheek with cool fingers. "You look exhausted, you poor thing. You've always carried so much. Always. Carried. So much." "Someone had to," I said lightly. Her smile tightened a fraction. "You were always so responsible. Not strong, not gifted, responsible." Her gaze slid to Alex. "And you are?" "A colleague," Alex replied. "No rank, no correction." Her interest dimmed immediately. Another uncle clapped my shoulder. "Your grandfather would be proud. You've handled all this beautifully." Handled. As if this were an event, not an erasure. They steered me through the room, introduced me, displayed me, a grieving heir, a devoted grandson, the family lawyer who had stepped up. The contract pulsed each time someone touched me, a faint burn under the ribs, a distant ringing behind the eyes. Microaggressions disguised as affection. "You're thinner. You always were sensitive. It's good you never wanted more." Alex rarely spoke. When he did, it was to redirect conversations, to interrupt contact, to place himself between my nervous system and theirs. I started to understand the choreography. Halfway through the evening, I escaped toward the terrace doors, claiming the need for air. The city beyond the glass glittered like a separate civilization. I pressed my hands to the cool surface and breathed. The pressure eased. I almost missed the voices behind me. "Too early to finalize, of course," someone murmured. "A man. Older. The scent of cedar and wealth." "But the corporation is satisfied," another replied. Female. Crisp. Familiar. I didn't turn. "At least this one is compliant." The words slid easily, casually, like a note about the weather. "There was always something useful about him," the first voice continued. "Not brilliant, not disruptive, just steady, a soft laugh. He takes direction well." "I suppose that's a kindness," the woman said. "We could have done much worse." The contract surged. This time, Alex's proximity barely touched it. Cold flared in my chest. Not pain. Understanding. Footsteps retreated. Conversation dissolved back into music. For a moment, I couldn't move. Every childhood memory rewrote itself. Every compliment found its teeth. Alex came to stand beside me. He didn't ask if I was all right. He said quietly, "We can leave." I nodded once. Inside, the room continued to shimmer. My family continued to perform sorrow, to accept condolences, to exchange investment, updates beneath the pretense of grief. I walked back through them like a ghost. No one noticed when we passed, not really, and that, more than anything else, told me exactly what I had always been. Not loved, contained, We didn't go back to my apartment. Alex took me to his office instead. At night, the building felt different. The administrative quiet of day had thinned into something almost reverent. Most of the lights were off. Only a few floors glowed like islands in a dark sea. The elevator carried us upward without a sound. His office was dim, lit only by the city and the low amber strip beneath his desk. I didn't sit. I walked to the glass wall and stared out at the grid of streets far below, every moving light a life that still belonged to itself. How many, I asked, like me? Alex didn't answer immediately. Behind me, I heard him set something down. The soft click of a tablet. The shift of weight. Define, like you, he said. People who were inconvenient, I replied. People who were converted instead of killed. People who were managed. The contract stirred at the word. A warning ripple. Alex moved closer, not close enough to touch. Close enough to be felt. Not many, he said. I turned. How many, Alex? His gaze held mine. No evasion. No polish. Fewer than a dozen, he said. In the last 20 years, my stomach dropped. And the others? They didn't stabilize, he said. They broke. They disappeared into settlements, facilities, sealed trusts. Their cases closed before they could be audited, before they could speak, before they could be seen. Then why am I still here? I asked. Why am I walking around instead of being folded into some foundation with a tasteful plaque? Because you're difficult, he said. I let out a humorless breath. My family would disagree. They are not measuring the same thing I am. He gestured toward the city. Most people placed under binding pressure adapt by shrinking. They make themselves smaller, quieter, less resistant. You did the opposite. I looked for loopholes. You created them, he corrected. In under 48 hours, you exposed structural inconsistencies my analysts have been circling for years. That's your answer? I said. I'm still breathing because I'm annoying. Because you're precise, Alex said. Because you don't flail. You trace. I studied his face. Then why are you still here? He didn't pretend not to understand. Because, he said slowly, this system can only be dismantled in public, and every previous case collapsed before it reached daylight. The words settled between us. You're looking for a scandal, I said. I'm looking for a record, he replied. Something that survives scrutiny. Law, media, political filtration. Something that doesn't disappear when pressure is applied. And you think that's me? Yes. The contract pulsed. This time, it didn't hurt. It felt attentive. You're using me, I said quietly. I'm aligning with you, Alex corrected. There is a difference. Is there? Yes, he said. Using you would require control. This requires consent. I barked a short laugh. I'm collateral, Alex. My consent is decorative. He stepped closer. The pressure softened. Not in this, he said. I searched his expression for calculation. I found something harder. Resolve. So, I said. What happens to cases that survive long enough? They become dangerous, Alex replied. I nodded once. Good, I said. I'm done being manageable. For the first time since I had met him, Alex didn't look like a warden. He looked like someone who had just found the missing piece of a weapon. The archive floor was closed for the night, which meant it was never truly empty. Security lights glowed between the stacks, low and blue, turning shelves into long shadows. Beyond the tall windows, rain slid down the glass in restless lines, blurring the city into something soft and distant. The storm had come in quietly, the way pressure always did. I felt the contract before I understood it. A tightening under the skin, a faint vibration along my spine. My jaw locked as if my body were bracing for impact I couldn't see. Not again, I muttered, rubbing my sternum. Alex looked up from the terminal instantly. You pushed too far, he said. I opened 3 folders. Exactly. The pressure sharpened. Not pain yet. A warning. Like standing too close to an electrical field. I exhaled through my nose. You know, for something that's allegedly not a prison, It's very invested in my stress levels. You're destabilizing long-buried structures, Alex replied. They respond. Of course they do. The vibration surged. This time, it didn't wait. Heat flared in my chest, sudden and bright. My breath hitched. My fingers curled involuntarily, nails biting into my palm. Alex was already moving. He crossed the space between us in 2 strides and caught my wrists, not restraining, anchoring. His hands were warm, solid. The contact sent a shock through me that had nothing to do with the contract. The pain crested, then fell, fast, like something heavy had been lifted away from my lungs. I sagged forward before pride could stop me. Alex's hand slid from my wrist to my back, steadying me. I could feel his heart through his coat, slow, controlled, close enough that the rhythm started to sync with my own. The world narrowed. The archive faded into dark shapes and rain sound. All that existed was heat and breath, and the faint, clean scent of him, something like winter air and metal and smoke after rain. You should sit, he said quietly. I'm fine, I said automatically. Thomas. I hated how easily my name settled into his voice. I said, I'm fine. Your hands are shaking. I looked down. They were. He didn't release me. Neither did I step away. Congratulations, I said weakly. You've officially become my unauthorized medical device. Try not to be dramatic. I am under magical corporate assault. That's administrative, he corrected. Despite myself, a breath of laughter slipped out of me. It sounded wrong in the dark. Too soft. Too real. Does this happen to all your assets? I asked. His thumb shifted almost absently at my wrist. No, the word was quiet. It did more damage than any declaration. The pressure was gone now, replaced by something else. A warmth that had nothing to do with alpha influence and everything to do with proximity. I was suddenly aware of details. The line of his throat, the faint crease between his brows, the way his breath brushed my cheek when he spoke. You're exhausted, he said. So are you, I replied. His gaze dropped to my mouth. The archive seemed to hold its breath. It wasn't a decision. It was momentum. A slow, inevitable tilt of space between us. I felt the moment before it happened. The soft narrowing. The fragile, dangerous quiet. And for one suspended second, I wanted to let it. Then the thought hit, sharp, clear, unwelcome. What if this isn't attraction? What if this is the contract learning my shape? My hands came up between us. Not hard. Enough. Alex froze instantly. The space snapped back into place. I can't, I said. He didn't argue. He stepped away. The warmth vanished. The air cooled. The archive returned, shelves and rain and distance reasserting themselves. I don't want to need you, I said hoarsely. Not like that. Alex studied me, something unreadable behind his eyes. Then don't, he said. But the echo of his heartbeat stayed with me long after he moved back to the terminal. And the contract was very, very quiet. The invitation arrived the way poison often does, on heavy paper, with warm phrasing, and the family seal embossed in gold. They wanted to discuss my well-being. They wanted to ease the strain. They wanted to resolve internal matters quietly. Alex read the message once, then again, slower. They're offering a modification, he said. They're offering a leash, I replied. We met them in the Hale corporate offices, not the public floors, the inner ones, where the walls were thicker, the elevators slower, and the meeting rooms insulated not just against sound, but against inquiry. The negotiating chamber was oval, paneled in dark wood. A long glass table sat in the center like a polished blade. The elders were already there when we entered, 3 men, 2 women, all impeccably dressed, all carrying the particular stillness of wolves who had never had to wait. Thomas, my Aunt Elsbeth said, standing. We're so relieved you came. I took the seat opposite her. Alex remained behind me. They spoke gently, too gently, about grief, about stress, about misunderstandings. They expressed concern over the harshness of the current arrangement, over how abruptly my status had changed. We want to offer you some relief, my uncle said. A voluntary confirmation of your role. In exchange, we will petition for mitigation of the binding. Alex's shoulders tensed. I leaned forward. Mitigation how? Reduced monitoring, greater personal discretion, access to independent counsel. My pulse picked up. And, Elsbeth added smoothly, we would like to formalize certain archival transfers. There it was. I felt the click before I could name it. Which archives? I asked. Primarily legacy holdings, she said. The inheritance chain your grandfather managed personally. The deep ones. The ones we couldn't reach. My gaze slid to Alex. A single, almost imperceptible shake of his head. They're not offering relief, he said calmly. They're offering reinforcement. This modification would bind him deeper. The elders smiled politely. Mr. Weir, Elsbeth said, your corporation's function is enforcement, not interpretation. Alex didn't raise his voice. This document escalates asset integration, he said. It would convert him from active assurance to internalized property. A cold line formed in my gut. You didn't mention that, I said. Because we assumed, my uncle replied, that you understood your position. The contract stirred, not pain, anticipation. My mind raced. If I signed, they'd tighten their grip. But they'd open the vault. They had to. You can't do this, Alex said quietly, leaning closer to me. This won't loosen anything. It will lock you into the very framework you're trying to expose. I know, I said. Then don't. I need what's behind that door. There will be other ways. Not fast enough. Alex's voice dropped. You don't survive this by being brave. You survive it by being precise. I met his eyes. This is precision. He searched my face. For fear. For doubt. For anything that might make this a negotiation. He didn't find it. The elders slid the tablet toward me. The contract hummed. I picked up the stylus. And signed. The sensation was immediate. Not pain. Alignment. Like a massive lock somewhere far below reality had turned one notch. The room felt cleaner, sharper. The elders exhaled as one. Good, Elsbeth said softly. We're glad you're cooperating. I stood. The pressure in my chest had changed. Not heavier, deeper. Whatever had been holding me before had just found a better grip. As they escorted us from the chamber, a security panel at the far end of the corridor slid open. Beyond it lay a vault corridor. And I knew with absolute certainty, something in the world had just noticed me. And approved. The vault corridor descended beneath the family offices like a vein into bedrock. The air cooled with every level. The walls shifted from polished stone to matte alloy. No decoration, no history, only access points and sealed doors, each marked with sigils I recognized from contracts too old to digitize. This is where my grandfather kept the things he didn't want time touching, I said quietly. And where families keep the things they don't want law finding, Alex replied. The final door accepted my biometrics without hesitation. It slid open. The archive inside wasn't a room. It was a system. Server columns rose from floor to ceiling, humming softly, their surfaces shot through with pale light. Holographic interfaces bloomed as I stepped inside, responding not to motion, but to presence. To classification, the contract thrummed. I walked forward, data unfolded. Not summaries, not sanitized reports, raw structures. Financial architectures layered like skeletons. Trusts braided through shell corporations. Asset transfers routed through charitable fronts, disaster funds, cultural institutions. Every debt resolved by the quiet conversion of a person into a ledger entry that could be moved, repurposed, erased. I touched a file. A name bloomed in the air. Elliot Crane. Under it, internal directives. Subject stabilized. Liquidation deferred. Asset utility under review. Another, Mara Lorne. Compliance failure. Transfer to long-term holding. Another, Jonah Pierce. Termination of public identity. Residual integration complete. My stomach lurched. These weren't records. They were recipes. protocols for dismantling human lives into manageable components, utilization charts, risk curves, conversion outcomes. Contracts weren't safeguards. They were weapons, designed to constrict, to isolate, to render people administratively invisible. I opened deeper layers, and the system began to show me what it had done. Not images, patterns, behavioral dissolutions mapped across timelines, neural suppression indexed as financial efficiency, emotional erosion tracked like asset depreciation, digital ghosts, not consciousness, traces, the afterimages of erased futures. My hands moved automatically, pulling directories, duplicating cores, forking secure mirrors. I routed everything into an external stack Alex had given me weeks ago just in case. The first tremor hit my knees. I ignored it. The second sent nausea flooding up my throat. I swallowed hard and kept working. The contract pulsed, once, twice, then surged. Pain exploded behind my sternum, sharp enough to tear breath from my lungs. I staggered against a server column, vision blurring. Heat flooded my face. "No," I whispered. "Not now." My fingers slipped. Red dotted the glass. I stared at it stupidly before realizing it was blood. The pressure intensified. It wasn't a warning anymore. It was a corrective force. The system didn't like being observed. My stomach heaved. I barely turned my head before bile burned my throat. The room tilted violently. Data blurred into light. My heart hammered, erratic, desperate. I forced my hands back to the interface. One more directory. One more copy. I had just initiated the final transfer when my legs buckled. I hit the floor hard. Somewhere distant, an alarm began to scream. The last thing I felt before the pain crested into white was the contract tightening, then snapping outward, not breaking, yielding. "Thomas." Alex's voice cut through the fog like a blade. Footsteps, rapid, unrestrained. Hands under my shoulders, warm, solid. The pressure recoiled, as if something had just been challenged. "You weren't authorized for this depth," he said tightly. I laughed weakly. "I never am." My vision swam. I tasted iron. My head lolled against his chest to spite myself. "You're bleeding," he said. "Occupational hazard." His arm tightened around me. "I received a directive," he said, "to secure the asset and terminate the breach." "Did you?" I murmured. "Yes." He lifted me. Not carefully, decisively. I ignored it. The world blurred into corridors and light. The archive doors slid past. The alarm wailed. My stomach twisted again, but Alex's presence crushed the pain into something survivable. I clutched his coat. "Did we get it?" I asked. "Yes," he said without hesitation. "All of it." I exhaled, and let the dark take me, because the most important thing had already happened. He had chosen. I woke to noise. Not the kind you hear in a room. The kind that exists everywhere at once. Voices overlapping. Alerts chiming. The low, constant vibration of a network in distress. Alex's office screens were alive when I forced my eyes open. Every surface carried moving text. News feeds. Financial tickers. Emergency broadcasts. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and burnt coffee. "You're conscious," Alex said. He was standing by the central display, jacket off, sleeves rolled, his posture too still to be calm. "How long was I out?" I asked. 8 hours, and... He glanced at me, and the world noticed. A headline pulsed onto the nearest screen. "Leak exposes werewolf dynasty's human collateral system." Another. "Class action filed against multiple clans, financial institutions, and collection firms." Another. "Internal documents suggest decades of systematic disappearances." The data we had pulled from the vault was everywhere. Raw, unfiltered, ugly. Journalists dissected it live. Analysts froze mid-sentence as documents populated in real time. Forums ignited. Survivor networks emerged from nowhere. Families started recognizing names. Digital space became a courtroom without walls. Investigations are underway. Alex said. Independent task forces, international auditors, regulatory coalitions. Every major clan asset group is frozen pending inquiry. And my family? Your family's foundation accounts were seized 40 minutes ago. I closed my eyes. Not in relief. In recalibration. Lawsuits are forming faster than they can be indexed, Alex continued. Former heirs, disappeared branches, proxy victims, entire estates built on converted lives. I watched a live panel debate the legal implications of sentient collateral. For once, no one was laughing. The system was unraveling publicly, which meant it couldn't correct quietly. The door to the office opened. 6 people entered. 4 men, 2 women, all wearing the neutral insignia of corporate authority, the council. They didn't look at me. Their attention went to Alex. Mr. Weir, the woman in front said. You were instructed to secure the asset and contain the breach. I was, Alex agreed. You failed. Yes. A murmur rippled through them. You facilitated an unauthorized extraction. Another said. You obstructed internal enforcement. You allowed proprietary structures to become public. Alex didn't deny it. You are ordered, the first woman continued, to surrender supervisory control immediately and present the asset for reassignment. The contract stirred, not violently. Curiously, Alex's jaw tightened. No, he said. Silence fell. You will comply, the man to her right said, or you will be removed. Alex turned, not to them, to me. His gaze was steady, not apologetic, not torn, resolved. Thomas Hale, he said clearly, is no longer under my supervision. The words struck the room like a dropped instrument. What are you doing? The woman demanded. Alex reached into his jacket and withdrew a slim device. Corporate key, identity node, authorization, lattice. He set it on the table. I am resigning, he said. Effective immediately. That is not a resignation, the man snapped. That is desertion. Alex's mouth curved slightly. Then process it as such. You're forfeiting your status, another said. Your protections. Your standing. Your influence. Yes. Without us, she said coldly. You are nothing. Alex didn't look back at them. He looked at me. No, he said. Without you, this structure is nothing. The council stood in rigid disbelief as Alex stepped away from the table. Away from them. Toward me. The contract pulsed once. Then went very, very still. You can't just leave, the woman said. You belong to this system. Alex stopped beside me. So did he replied. Then he took my hand. Not to steady me. To declare something. The council said nothing else. They didn't need to. Outside, the digital world roared. Inside, something ancient finally lost its scaffolding. And for the first time since my name had been written into a ledger, the system had no one left to speak for it. Morning came without permission. Pale light slipped through the half-open blinds, laying quiet lines across my walls, my desk, the abandoned stack of legal pads I hadn't touched in days. The city outside sounded distant, muted, as if someone had turned the world's volume down. My apartment had never felt so empty, not lonely, unoccupied. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the familiar pressure to announce itself. It didn't. No tightening under my ribs, no metallic echo on my tongue, no invisible cord pulling my breath into regulation. I lifted a hand slowly. Nothing trembled. The absence was louder than the pain had ever been. I sat up. The movement was mine. Entirely. No resistance. No delay. The contract was still there. I could feel its residue, like the ghost of a limb. But whatever authority it had once exerted was gone. Not severed completely. Dissolved. I pressed my palm to my chest. Warm. Human. Unmanaged. Behind me, the floor creaked softly. Alex stood in the doorway. He wasn't in a suit. Just a dark shirt, sleeves rolled, hair slightly disordered in a way that felt strangely intimate after weeks of immaculate control. Morning light caught in the faint shadows under his eyes. You're awake, he said. I think so, I replied. Hard to tell. The pain's usually my clock. He crossed the room and stopped a few feet away. How do you feel? I searched myself. Quiet, I said. Which is unsettling. That will pass. Will it? Yes, he said. You'll fill it with something else. I swung my legs over the edge of the bed. The cool of the floor grounded me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. There was no system pressing us into proximity now, no enforced geometry. Just space, choice. If I'm not something to fix, I said finally. What am I? The question surprised me with its weight. It had lived under my tongue longer than any contract. Alex studied me. Not as an assessment, not as a case. As a person, someone who gets to choose, he said. The words didn't ring. They settled. I let out a slow breath I hadn't known I was holding. Then I choose, I said, voice rough, not to be managed, not to be useful, not to be easy. A faint curve touched his mouth. Good. I stood. The distance between us was small, smaller than it had ever felt. There was no surge of relief this time when he was near. No enforced calm. Only awareness. Warmth. The steady recognition of another presence choosing to remain. Alex, I said. Yes. This isn't. I gestured vaguely between us. You're not stabilizing anything. No. And I'm not an asset. No. We were close enough now that I could see the fine lines of fatigue around his eyes. The almost imperceptible tension he carried when he wasn't wearing authority like armor. I lifted my hand. Paused. He didn't move. Didn't lean. Didn't claim. So I closed the distance. The kiss was gentle, unremarkable in spectacle, everything in meaning. No lightning. No submission. No rescue. Just contact. Warmth, meeting warmth. Breath, finding breath. When we parted, we didn't step away. We didn't need to. Outside, the city continued reorganizing itself. Inside my chest, nothing tightened. Nothing corrected. Nothing claimed me. For the first time in my life, there was no structure telling me who I was allowed to be. Only the quiet, terrifying, exhilarating fact that whatever came next would be mine. The building still remembered what it used to be. The elevator hummed too softly. The hallways were too straight. The windows too narrow, as if privacy were something that had once been enforced here. We kept the structure. We changed the meaning. Our office occupied what had once been a secondary processing floor. Now it held 2 desks that didn't match, a second-hand couch that complained loudly when anyone sat on it, and a coffee machine that should probably be classified as a crime. Morning light spilled through the tall windows, catching on the new sign we'd mounted beside the door. Hale and Weir. Advocacy and contract dissolution. Underneath, in smaller print, if it owns you, we'll argue with it. I'm telling you, I said, squinting at my mug. This isn't coffee. It's a threat. Alex glanced up from the tablet in his hands. You're dramatic. This liquid has opinions. You used 3 scoops. Exactly. He took a sip. Didn't react. Which was somehow worse. Outside our glass walls, 2 clients waited. A young beta whose inheritance trust had just been frozen pending investigation. An older alpha whose sister had vanished into a voluntary asset integration 5 years ago and had finally been found alive in a sealed corporate ward. The cases never looked the same, but the patterns always did. The lawsuits were moving through the courts like slow, grinding machinery. Entire clan boards had collapsed. Asset networks were being dismantled. Foundations that had once smiled from gala posters were now evidence lockers with branding. The system wasn't gone, but it was visible, and that changed everything. Alex set the tablet down. We're late. On purpose, I said. I'm establishing a culture. You're stalling. I'm emotionally preparing to apologize for the coffee. The door chimed. Both clients looked up. Alex stood, straightened the edge of his sleeve, then hesitated, not like he used to, not as if he were waiting for authorization, as if he were checking in. I smiled. He smiled back, faint and real. Ready? He asked. No. I said. But I'm available. We stepped out together, into a space that no longer categorized us, no longer quantified us, no longer expected us to be anything but present. For the first time in my life, I'm not listed anywhere, and I've never felt more real.